How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be cutting a wrench in half and then hitting it with a hammer until it looks like a knife. Now, be advised, I am taking full advantage of camera angles right here to make it look like this knife is properly proportioned when it absolutely is not. Consider it a peek into an alternate dimension where I'm a good blacksmith. And in reality, here's what it looks like. I know what you're thinking, not pathetic at all. But despite the fact that the blade is so baby tiny, it is still hecka sharp. Oops. You didn't see that. I don't even have to stab it in. I just touch it and then drag it across and it just cuts right through it. It's like a lightsaber. Cuts through it like paper. I mean, it's definitely still not something you would ever want to be cut by. I'll make sure to explain pretty well what went wrong, why the blade ended up so tiny, and I guess why the whole thing ended up so tiny later in the video. But yeah, you'll be able to make a pretty good, actually very good full-size karambit with this tutorial, no problem. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. Alright, so I'm starting out with a 21mm Husky wrench from Home Depot. Obviously just buy whatever wrench size fits your finger best, but what I'm going to be doing for the forging process is, as you can see here, this part is curved so that you can fit your hand under it when you're going for nuts and bolts on flat surfaces, but since we obviously don't need to be doing that anymore, I'm going to be heating it up right about here, and then to make sure that I don't deform the ring, I'm going to dip just the ring in water so that solidifies, and then I can flip it over to a convex and just pound right here on the edge of the ring, and that will flatten out this right here. Then once I got that straightened up, I'm going to heat up the same area, quench it in the same way, and then I'm going to pound right here a little bit so that I can scoot this ring more towards this side so that when you put your finger through it, it's not so pushed downwards. And it doesn't really come across on the camera very well, but the surfaces are actually curved, I would assume, to make the thing more comfortable to hold, but that's going to be a problem if I'm trying to put wood on the handle because the surface isn't flat. So I am going to be flattening out the surface. When I'm doing that, I have to pay special attention to make sure I'm not making this way too wide, so I have to keep on pounding it down this way and this way. So hopefully after I keep on doing that over and over and over, then I'll have something that is about this width but is perfectly flat. Then for the blade, I actually have no idea what I'm going to do for this, because when you hammer a bevel into one edge, it actually causes your piece to curve in the opposite direction, which is the opposite of what a karambit does. It has a bevel on this side, but it curves in that way. So I've got a feeling what I'm going to end up having to do is just do a really rough job on the curve and the bevel and then just clean it up on the grinder. Alright, that should be it. Now I'm going to give myself a little bit of a head start. Instead of cutting it off straight, I'm going to cut it off at an angle, just save myself a little bit of time shaping it.
Just wanna get by.
That was easy.
Okay, so as you just saw, right after I did that initial straightening of the ring, I then realized that that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, so I tried to go ahead and go for that next angling of the ring so that, you know, your finger wouldn't get pushed down so far. But when I did that, that accidentally sort of deformed the ring, so I'm going to try to see if I can round the ring back out by hitting directly in the center of it with the ball peen hammer. This is experimental. I have no idea if it's going to work. Cross your fingers. I don't think that worked very well. Alright, plan B, I'm going to try to use this big ol' Allen key to pound through the ring. Alright, I think that worked about as good as I'm gonna get for now. I'm gonna work on the handle now and the blade.
Between two sides of people focus is up in ocean. My heart is up in flames, 'cause it's not just a case, it's my career. It's also my rage. Sorry, you won't tell us.
Alright, now I'm working on the curve.
Tell us who's right, as far as I'm concerned. We both lost sight and wake up.
Alright, so I've got two options right now. At the time of me filming this video, I haven't actually filmed the intro for the video yet. So once I am filming the intro, what I can do, option number one, is to go, hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be making a mini karambit. I'm making it so small so it'll be easier to conceal, and just pull some reason out of my butt to make it sound like I made it this small on purpose, when in reality I'm just not that good at blacksmithing right now. And I know that this is only my second ever blacksmithing project, so I can't be expected to be that good, so I'm not going to be that hard on myself. But for the sake of honesty and for the sake of just letting you guys know that even though I've been making stuff for a really long time, I still make mistakes all the time. So if you make mistakes on stuff, you really shouldn't be discouraged. The worst thing you can really do, even more than making a mistake, is giving up. So I'm going to take this thing, just try to salvage it, and make the coolest thing that I can out of what I've got. The mistake that I made was underestimating how much material I would need to make the blade wider than this. So it looks at this point like the blade is not going to be any wider than the handle. I'm sure that's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to use a really low grit, like maybe 60 or 80 grit sandpaper on my belt sander, just to straighten out these edges right here. And then I'm going to move up to maybe 120 or 100 to clean off all of these hammer marks. And I'm probably going to use my Dremel tool to clean out the inside right here where the finger goes. So let's see what we can get out of this. Alright, it actually did not turn out that bad. Now, I do still kind of wish that I could have had the blade a lot bigger, but there is a certain charm that having the tiny little blade on it has. It sort of reminds me more of like an animal's claw, like a bear claw or a tiger claw or something. It's gonna look a lot better once I get it polished up and everything, but before I do any of the polishing or the sharpening, I still have to harden and temper the blade. To harden it, I'm just gonna throw it back in the forge, get it up to critical temperature, which is the temperature at which a magnet will not stick to the steel anymore. And then once it's that hot, I'm going to dip it in this motor oil right here. Now right now it's really too dark outside for my camera to be able to show you guys anything useful, but if you really need a visual aid, go ahead and watch my anvil video. I do quench a knife in there, but for here I'm just gonna skip to after that. Alright, now after the initial hardening, here's how you can tell if the blade hardened properly. If you take an unhardened piece of steel and you rub a file against it, I'm not sure if this comes across on the camera very well, but there's these scratch marks in it. But with the hardened blade, you can even hear it, the file just skates across the surface of it. Now I'm gonna sand off all the caca with some pretty light grit sandpaper. I think this is about 160. Now I'm going to temper it in this toaster oven at 425 degrees for probably about an hour. A good rule of thumb is when it turns gold. I may have over crispied this thing. You can see here the edge sort of started going bluish purple, but luckily this is not the blade. This is actually still part of the grip. The blade starts right here, and for the most part it stayed gold. And if I rub it with the file, it seems like it's still pretty hard, as opposed to the handle right here that you can see just gets completely scratched up because it was not hardened. So let's clean this thing up. Alright, now that I got most of the gold cleaned off, I've got this cup of water, I've got a whetstone, and I've got some dish soap. So I'm going to wet the stone. I'm gonna let it sit for like an hour to let the water soak into it. Now in the present future, I'm going to apply some dish soap to the stone and give it a good old rub. Yeah, boy. And now because the blade is concave, I can't really use the flat part of the stone. I have to use the edge of it. So you're going to angle it and draw it across 3 times. This way 3 times. I'm starting on the rougher side, by the way, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and basically just do this until you die. Then, as I'm sure you can imagine, when you're done here, you flip it over, do it on the other side. Then to fine tune the blade even more, I put some of this 800 grit wet dry sandpaper onto a wooden dowel, and you might have trouble believing this, but I'm going to rub the blade on it. And then finally, I'm gonna strop the blade. I'm just gonna use the other end of this poplar dowel. The only difference between stropping and sharpening is that instead of going in this direction, you're instead going in the opposite direction. Now I'm gonna do some little things on the blade. And there you go. After a quick little handle wrap, you got yourself a nice little tool made out of a different tool. Now you might be wondering why I decided to go with the paracord wrap instead of the wooden handle like I said I was going to in the beginning. Again, honesty time, guys. I could pretend like the main reason is that I think it would look kind of goofy having basically popsicle sticks stuck to the side of this thing and calling that a handle, because that's basically all I'd be able to do with the tang being so narrow. But if I'm being totally honest here, guys, I've been working on this for a week. I just kind of want to get this video finished. But truthfully, all jokes aside, I don't think we're missing very much with this paracord wrap handle right here. I do think it would look kind of funny with the skinny little wooden handle. And if I tried to make the handle any wider, then it would be wider than the blade, which would also look pretty dumb. So yeah, it's a shortcut, but I don't think it's a bad shortcut. And in case you guys noticed, the reason the paracord looks so thin is because I took the guts out of it. So this is basically just the skin of it. I had to do that to show the ergonomics of the handle a little better. So sorry it's a little shrimpy. Just don't do what I did and you should be fine. But that's just about all I got for today, guys. In fact, it is. So remember, guys, if you're not subscribed, it's always free, but missing out on some dank weapons isn't. Well, it actually is, but And just subscribe if you want. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye. See that? I was in fact not making out with a perfectly spherical female. I was messing around with a sangria bottle, and I like sucked the air out of it, and then I was like sliding the vacuum all over my face. I left it in one spot for too long, so it I guess you could say it gave me a bit of a hickey.